Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Bad Batch, where this time it's episode 6 of season 2 called Tribe. And once again, we will start with your ever so brief and quick review of this episode.
All right. Well, I liked this one better than last week because it wasn't treasure hunting. I do think it was interesting to see one of the Jedi we're familiar with from the Clone Wars. I know that the show is meant for kids, so they don't answer questions that I feel like need to be answered. But I'll probably end up getting into that while we're talking about stuff.
Probably.
So it did leave something to be desired.
Good, but could have been more. That was kind of my
And I thought the
summary of it.
Trandoshans were weak compared to what we've seen in the past with them.
Yeah, you know your enemies are always up to the level, just above the level of your heroes, right? So they can overcome something. That seems to be a common thing in everything. But I agree the Trandoshans could have been a little cooler. A little more, maybe. And the clones, again, were there, but kind of didn't do a whole lot. Anyway, let's kick it off, as we always do, with the top-rated comment from over on my review on the other channel.
Magnus TNT. Sort of sad that this episode heavily implies that all of Gungi's other classmates are dead. Kind of does, a little bit.
Maybe?
But we don't know if he was at the point where he was already shuffled off to a master.
Well, that was the first thing me and you discussed after the episode. We watched it, and we're like, so what do you think happened to the others? Where do you think Gungi was when Order 66 went down? Was he chilling in the temple? Was he with the other younglings somewhere? Was he on his own? Was he maybe a Padawan at that point?
I mean, you can almost safely assume that any Jedi Master who had a Padawan would have done anything they could to protect the Padawan.
Yeah, we've seen that before,
But
yeah.
they didn't know this was coming. Yes, they may have felt something. You know, watching the Order 66 scenes from across the media shows a lot of times the Jedi felt something before the clones turned.
Yeah, or, I mean, you had Yoda kind of feeling the whole thing going down.
Yeah, Yoda felt the deaths. But even when they showed in Bad Batch Season 1...
Yeah, you had... Depa was a little like...
She
had that kind of
felt
keen
it.
sense. Yeah,
like she
that
could
the
feel
Force
that
was
something
like,
was wrong with the clones.
Red alert, yes.
Yeah, with people she knew all of a sudden being very different.
Yeah.
So I would just think that a lot of times the Masters would try to protect the Padawans, but Gungi's not looking for his friends. He's running.
Just trying to get home.
He's trying to get home.
Which implies, yeah, he's probably lost everybody he knows and cares about.
Yeah, and Gungi's probably dead too.
Probably.
The Trandoshans were taking the first crack at them.
Yeah, we know that. We know things are going to get worse on Kashyyyk than that.
Things are going to get worse.
Much worse. So the odds of him surviving, unless he leaves again, I don't know.
Either he leaves or he's going to die on Kashyyyk, and I don't like to say that, but I think that's what'll happen.
I think that's what makes the most sense. Again, we do want to kind of keep a little in line with Yoda's famous "The last of the Jedi will you be," which doesn't mean there isn't.
He's a Padawan.
Well, he's a youngling, technically, last we know. So that's not even Padawan level. But you don't want, like, you know, there were 10,000 Jedi during the prequel era, and like only 12 of them died, and now there's like 9,900, and we're like, I know that's not the math, but it doesn't make sense that there would be that many out there, right? That they could still get together and be a formidable threat to the Empire.
And what's very important here to remember, when the clone troopers heard about there being a Jedi on the planet, the first thing they said is, we have to call it in.
Yeah.
And the Trandoshans are like, nah, we'll take care of it. So what do you think happened when the Trandoshans didn't come back from the mission?
It's heavily implied that
the clones forgot? They just like, I guess everything went fine. The Trandoshans must have just left.
We kind of, one of the comments I think addresses that a little bit, so we'll...
Oh.
No, that's fine. It's a good point. I mean, there's a reason why I think others have brought it up too. It is strange that Gungi just whips out the lightsaber and starts hacking the place up, because that's going to bring more trouble down upon him and Kashyyyk.
Next comment from Aloda L. I swear when I saw how Gungi tried to scare Echo away from him because he recognized the voice of a clone, I just felt so sad for him. After watching Clone Wars, seeing this is just tragic. Also, we got to see the Kinrath from KOTOR 1. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was very cool. I always love when you get little... It's not even a callback. It's just the wildlife that's on Kashyyyk. There's a lot of different spiders on Kashyyyk. We have different ones in Fallen Order, too. Mm-hmm. I would imagine a giant forest planet would have its fair share of arachnid creatures.
Right, I mean, this isn't even the first time we've seen arachnid creatures. There's some in Mando and in Rebels as well.
Well, yeah.
Probably because spiders usually, for a lot of people, hit that creepy factor.
They're scary, yeah.
They're scary, yeah.
For whatever reason, 8 legs is just, I think, built into our primitive brain that we see 8 legs and we think poisonous spider, whether we want to... You know, plenty of us humans have died along the way to poisonous spiders, so it's in there somewhere in that primitive brain. But anyway...
I do feel bad that Gungi was scared of the clones. You know, because... Obviously, that means he's seen some stuff.
Well,
along the
yeah.
way.
I was a little disappointed we didn't, and I, again, said this in the other review, that we didn't lean more into Gungi being afraid of the clones, and the clones kind of being at least a little reluctant to go to Kashyyyk, knowing that it could be an Imperial hotspot. Echo mentions there might have outposts there by now. It was kind of the whole, we only have 25 minutes, so let's kind of avoid what could have been the interesting conflict between Gungi not trusting them. It was like Omega said, it's okay, you can trust them, and he's like, yep, it's got to be the case.
Well, what I wanted was to have an interesting conflict between Echo and Hunter. I thought this would be the
Yeah,
second
that's-
time those two revisited the argument of we could be
Exactly.
doing more to help the people, and Hunter going, maybe we shouldn't go to somewhere really heavily Imperial controlled because we'll get killed and they'll take Omega.
Exactly. That's what I meant by this episode was good, but it could have been more. If you add 5 more minutes into this episode, and we could have a little more, internal conflict and a little more, building of the character of Gungi, not just, Omega said. And I get it. Omega just rescued him essentially, so he's going to be prone to trust her. But for all he knows, this is an Imperial team. They can say they don't work for the Imperials, but he might be hauling the Bad Batch might be hauling Gungi back to old Palpatine for all he knows.
Right. Next comment comes from Rend. At least for a filler episode, this was the most fun one so far this season.
Yeah, the word filler, I talk about it a lot in the other channel. It has that negative connotation around it.
Does,
right?
does.
It's like automatically means it was a bad episode, and it doesn't. You could have an episode that is just completely one-off, and it's fun, and it's enjoyable, and I would say this is that. Yes, it could have been a little more. It was just cool to see some cool action with the Trandoshans and the Wookiees. We go to Kashyyyk, we see Gungi.
Yeah, seeing a little more of Wookiee culture was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I loved everything with Gungi and, kind of returning home to rediscover his origin, essentially.
What's interesting is he was almost like built into him to ask the trees. He's over there asking the trees for help, and then kind of looks around and he sees the other Wookiees are doing it too.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a primal memory that's something that he would do when it's something that he wasn't raised doing.
No,
it's very interesting. I really enjoyed that.
No, I agree. It almost goes back to the spider thing. There are certain things just kind of built into your brain, whether you realize it or not, and you do things that are natural to you.
And let's not forget when we use the word filler, I consider the Clone Wars, the entire arc in the Clone Wars of the droid arc as filler, because it didn't really do anything to our story. But without that arc,
you don't get Gregor.
Where's my boy Gregor?
Yeah, Gregor. That was one of the coolest 30 seconds of the minute.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it lasted of the Clone Wars.
Like I said, I feel like that whole mission was kind of filler, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, there are some people who really love that arc and others who hate it. I think the Gregor episode in general is really good. It just, you have to go through 3 other episodes to get to it.
All right, move on to the next comment from Angelo Infinity. My personal theory for these formulaic fillers is that they're showing the Bad Batch has a tendency for doing good and helping others, so that when, I imagine, the moment comes to become full-fledged rebels, the choice makes sense or has some impact.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's kind of the general idea here, to see that they lean good, so when they make the ultimate choice. I just wish we would see a little more, conflict. In that first episode implied it was going to be a kind of major sticking point between Echo and Hunter, and since then it hasn't.
They haven't even on scenes shown them discussing this at all again.
No, it was just...
Rex is just going to show up and they're just going to do whatever Rex says, and...
Well, I'd do whatever Rex says too, but that's my captain right there. But no, but seriously, I do feel like that first episode really kind of... I thought it set the stage. Like, okay, we might get some filler, but at least those fillers are going to show the team kind of growing into the idea that we could be more, we could be heroes. Instead, they're just kind of like, yeah, of course we're heroes. Of course we always make the right choices.
Well, and there should be some conflict within the team. They shouldn't be following the same old dogma they've always been doing, because they are growing. They're changing. Things aren't the same they were. They're not really a clone squad anymore.
No, they're a separate entity upon themselves.
Hunter doesn't need to be the de facto leader. Now they can discuss things and make different choices.
Could be Echo. Echo could make his power play, take over the team. No, I don't think they would. I think Hunter is the leader, but you're right. They kind of implied that they need to find a purpose, and they're kind of just falling into the purpose of being the good guys instead of there being anything else around it, which it works, sure, but it could be more.
Right, next from Baza the Great. One of the things I liked about Andor was the 3-episode arcs. It gave a Clone Wars feel. 3 is the magic number, especially for Star Wars. I would like that with Bad Batch. The problem, I think, is that the show hasn't been given enough episodes. I would like to see 24 to 30 episode seasons with 3-episode arcs that are only like then a total of 8 to 10 stories seems doable, but I think Disney's trying to keep budgets down due to all their recent failures.
Yeah, I agree on the 3 episode arc, or 4 episode. Clone Wars was mainly 4 episodes. It gives you the time. And I don't know about the 24 to 30, as you point out, the budgetary problems there would be pretty immense, I think, considering that's like an extra 50% more episodes from what we're getting. So I don't know that they would do that. And keep in mind, the Clone Wars series on Cartoon Network never made money. That was actually kind of a loss for Lucasfilm. That was a George Lucas kind of pet project, I guess you could say, that he just wanted to do because he's a billionaire, which must be nice.
I feel like they get lost between genres in a way, or age groups. Let's say that.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Because they advertise it, and at the end of all one's like, parents, the Bad Batch is coming. Parents. I'm like, okay, you're implying that you want, you're setting things up like, hey, your kids are going to want to watch this show if they like Star Wars. Okay. But then you do things in there that are very tonally for adults. I think they're having trouble getting that delicate balance of being something that is good and fun for kids to watch, but something that their parents are going to sit down and get a little more out of.
Yeah, I don't think they're walking that fine line extremely well, or don't always. Sometimes they feel like they lean one way or the other far more, which I guess it works. I mean, it's hard to get that perfect blend, but at the same time, a lot of times as an adult, you watch it and go, this is not, this isn't very good. Not that it's bad, but it's not, it's not what you would expect. It's not late season Clone Wars, which, there's some phenomenal story arcs there, which is what, that comment brings up. Like the 22-minute introduce conflict, throw the wrench in the plan, resolve conflict, move on to next episode. I don't, I'm not saying a show can't work. I'm not saying I wouldn't enjoy a show like that, but I think most fans expect a little more than that out of Star Wars animation at this point.
All right, our next comment comes from Timefly. There was one bit of story arc hidden in this self-contained story. A few more subtle clues that Omega is Force sensitive.
She does say early in the episode that essentially I have a bad feeling about this, or something's off about this place.
It doesn't feel right.
She tries to talk to the trees with Gungi. I feel like if she is Force sensitive, it's something that we shouldn't just hold off on exploring.
It's been a long time since she's been free and everything, and she hasn't felt she hasn't done anything with that.
Gungi didn't sense anything from her, or did he, and that's why he trusted her, or...
I feel like the ship has sailed, honestly.
I agree,
I feel like the fact that she didn't feel right about this place is because she's got an enhanced clone with maybe some traits from all of them.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to get something with her.
Hunter's high in intuition and noticing those little cues and details.
That should have been Hunter immediately stepping off the ship and being like...
Well, he didn't. That's why he wanted her to stay with the ship and guard the ship. They didn't trust that place.
No, well, they
shouldn't. But even Echo was like, yeah, I don't like this place either. Anyone walking off that ship would have looked around at this dankly lit place that has ill repute and been like, I don't feel quite right.
Yeah, I feel like Hunter's ability is kind of neglected. Of all of them, his ability is rarely ever even touched upon. Kind of that heightened senses and... I mean, he's the good leader.
I mean, part of your intuition comes from noticing all those details. And if she has some of Hunter's ability for that, I could see that coming through there. Of course, if they turn around and make her Force sensitive, I'm going to be 100% wrong. But I feel like at this point the ship sailed.
I do, too. I think they're still going to reveal something, but I don't think it's going to be Force sensitivity. Could be, but they have to do something because they kind of implied in Season 1 that she's very special, but haven't really explained why.
It could be because this is the first time they really had controlled mutation.
Yeah, that could be. She's supposedly older than them, so that's an issue as well.
Well, it could just be that let's look at this way. Maybe her gene code holds the key to making the mutated clones. If they used her DNA to make the Bad Batch, maybe without her they cannot make any more enhanced clones.
So maybe they took her DNA, which has a lot of mutations, and separated them out and made the Bad Batch?
Possibly, I mean...
Which would make her their mother in a weird sort of way.
If Jango and Boba's DNA can just pretty much spit out more Jango Bobas, her DNA can spit out more Bad Batch.
It could be.
It could be why they were so desperate to get her back when things were going bad, because they're like, oh, these enhanced clones, they're the good ones. And they're like, oh god, where's Omega?
She is the Omega, she's the N, so it kind of implies whatever she was, they don't need to make more because they have what they need out of her. If that makes sense. Which is the ability to make more Bad Batch-ish clones. I don't know. Spitballing right now.
All right, we'll move on to President Millard Fillmore. I feel kind of honored getting to read his comment. This felt so weightless. Like, something I appreciated about Kenobi was the absolute fear Jedi had about being discovered. At least the Jedi in the beginning. When Gungi reveals himself, it doesn't feel like it has weight. The threat of the Empire isn't there.
Yeah, I remember the first episode of Rebels, Kanan, activating his lightsaber is a huge deal, and he even says something to Ezra like, "Kid, I'm about to show the whole galaxy." I don't remember exactly the quote, but it had weight.
Well,
This was just
even
Gungi like waving his lightsaber around on Kashyyyk.
Well, even in
And he's
Jedi Fallen
young.
Order,
Well, yeah,
Cal lived for years hiding who he was. He was reluctant to even save his friend who was falling.
yeah,
He wasn't even using the Force to help save himself in that situation.
that's a good point. It's dangerous to use the Force, and Gungi is young. He might not totally comprehend how dangerous it is for
To
him
whip
yet.
out your lightsaber every 2 seconds?
Yeah, plus it's the early days of the Empire. We have no idea how much Gungi... He's been on the run, right? He's hiding. He doesn't probably get the hollow news to know exactly what's going on, so...
Inquisitors probably haven't been fully turned and trained quite yet.
Inquisitors
Maybe.
are around, according to the Vader comics. They should be out doing their thing at this point.
Okay, good.
So, I mean, I don't know. You would think he would have the wherewithal to not just start slashing tanks and leaving signs behind that there's a Wookiee on or a Jedi on Kashyyyk. They don't even know it's a Wookiee.
Well, especially because of the fact that the clones even tell him not to pull out the lightsaber.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's one of those things. There's a lot of little things if you want to nitpick the episode that you could, take issue with, but that's the difference between this and Andor. You kind of tend to let things slide a little bit more in the animation department than you would in a show like that.
Moving on to Jake G. 1500. I liked this episode a lot. I wish Gungi's return wasn't shown in the trailers.
Yeah, too much always shown in the trailers. That
Trailers
would have
are
been
tricky.
cool.
Trailers are tricky.
Yeah.
They always show you just enough, but you're like, really, just only show me things from the first couple episodes and let the rest be a mystery?
Yeah. I mean, you could have just not shown Gungi. Like, showing Gungi in the trailer wasn't the reason I watched it. Though that said, having him a surprise appear in an episode would have been cool. Does that make sense?
Oh, I agree. I mean, they showed enough in the trailer without showing Gungi. They could have easily just shown, they did show the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. They could have made us think we're going back to Kashyyyk, but not shown us Gungi.
Yeah, they could have. Absolutely. That would have been a smarter idea, I think.
I think so. Moving on to Simon Yesh. At some point during this episode, a member of the Bad Batch said, "How did the Trandoshans get Republic tanks? The problem is that they were old Separatist tanks, not Republic. It's a little detail, but it just got me." This kind of goes along with water bears. Not a complaint, but one thing I've been most curious about is why the Empire is using AATs. My current theory is that they're using old leftover tanks because why not make use of them? But I'm hoping it's not just reusing assets so they don't have to make a new flame tank.
I think it's reusing assets.
It did throw me in the episode when they called them Republic tanks.
Yes, they're like, those are AATs. Those are classic episode 1, battle droid tanks, essentially.
Like, hey, we saw these things all over Naboo.
Yeah, that wasn't the Republic invading Naboo.
No, it wasn't the Republic. The Gungans weren't piloting these.
Yeah, I think that is kind of a mistake. I think it goes along with what he says about the assets, because if you've seen any behind-the-scenes stuff, they try to reuse assets all the time. You're trying to, in any kind of game or CGI, you're trying to just have to make one thing and, maybe tweak it a little to make it look a little different. So I think the idea here is they wanted to use some tanks. They get to the actual animation part of the episode and realize, well, we have this asset, and they go ahead and use it, despite the fact somebody had called them Republic tanks, and they probably didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Is my guess.
Which is just poor. They could have said anything other than Republic tanks. Like, just why are they using
edit that
Republic
out.
supplies?
Yeah,
or
just edit that
why are
out.
Trandoshans working with the Empire?
Something.
Well, that's all I had to say. Why are Trandoshans working with the Empire?
Yes. Well, they kind of do. Well, I don't even think they
But that would have
mentioned
been a
that.
better
See, that was
line.
another thing that they could have gone more into. Like, what is going on with the Trandoshans working with the Empire?
No, just because the Trandoshans hate the Wookiees so much. They're like, hey, you're going to Kashyyyk, huh?
Yeah,
We're
well-
really good trackers and hunters. We'll help you capture some Wookiees.
Yeah. Well, we know they get enslaved, and they do say in the episode that they're just getting supplies, or just their raw materials, I should say, of the planet. We know it's more than that. We know Trandoshans,
They don't like Wookiees.
they don't like Wookiees.
Maybe they're jealous of the hair. Maybe if you shave a Wookiee, they look like Trandoshans, and they're like, ah.
If I was a scaly creature, I might be jealous of Wookiees.
Not if you had to comb it.
Ooh, good point. But no, I think it's just a little mistake that for some reason they didn't correct. And I mean, you could explain it that they have these old tanks that they've probably confiscated from the Separatists, and they're just using them. I don't think that's a big deal.
Next comment from Todd Yoho. The Bad Batch are NPCs in their own campaign. This goes along with Atmosphere. I like that. I'm getting ready for it to finally get going next week. That's true. Next week's our first two-parter.
Yeah, next week is supposed to be the kickoff to bigger and better things.
I mean, the show is called The Bad Batch, but like you said, they're just like the NPC bots walking around, and Omega makes all of their choices for them and does everything.
Yes. It's like the Bad Batch exists to facilitate other characters coming in from time to time.
I kind of get upset that Omega never listens to anybody. Omega, do this. Omega, stay here. Omega, do this. Omega just does whatever she wants, and there's never any consequences.
Yes.
Like, if it's like a parent with a kid in a grocery store. My parents, you stayed in the aisle that that they were shopping in. That was the rule. We stay in the same aisle. You can wander a little bit, but stay in the same aisle and don't just grab things and put them in the cart. Okay?
That's what every kid does, though.
If we started wandering too far or being too sassy or bratty or whatever, it was, now you have to walk with the cart with one hand on it, pick a side, one hand on the cart. No, you don't get to stand in the front and ride. One hand, you have to hold the cart the whole time, and that was your punishment. Omega, on the other hand, gets free reign. She does whatever the heck she wants, and there's no consequences to her actions. Instead, all of her consequences are justifications. Oh, Omega, she ran off and got into a firefight. But it's okay because she saved some kid. Oh, Omega ran off and risked the Bad Batch going after a treasure sack. Where were the consequences? There weren't any. She felt a little bit bad, but they're like, it's okay, Omega. Everything's fine. No. She knew the consequences could get people killed.
I think the problem is it's like Omega is part of the team, yet at the same time they try to play that we have to protect Omega card, but they bring her on every single mission.
We have to protect her, but we don't discipline her for not obeying orders to keep her safe.
Which I thought was going to be, when we introduced Omega in the first season, I thought that was going to kind of be part of what the show would maybe be about, like trying to balance the whole we have to be responsible for Omega, yet we are this team that takes these jobs that are very dangerous and have to maybe integrate her.
What annoys me is she wants so bad to be integrated, to be part of the team, but she won't follow orders.
Yes, which is any other member of the team not following Hunter's orders would probably be, well, I mean, not like disciplined,
and they make it that
but
anytime she disobeys the orders and does whatever she wants, it's because she did the right thing. She made the right call on her own. Making it imply that is Hunter a bad leader? If
that's what I'm saying before.
Apparently he gives orders, and if you follow those orders, the plan fails?
I feel like of all the characters, like, and granted they haven't been necessarily like highlighted per se, but Hunter has suffered from bringing in Omega because not only does he not get to showcase his abilities, but he feels like a bad leader. And I'm not saying he needs to know how to father. I'm saying that could have been an interesting arc for him, learning how to be a more responsible quote-unquote parent. But he doesn't. He just keeps like, oh, Omega said it was a good idea. Let's do what Omega says. Oh, Omega got us into a firefight and ruined the mission. But we freed Gungi, so it's okay. She did the right thing, even though she didn't follow instructions. I don't know. It's a weird blend that doesn't always work with her. But no, I mean, like the last comment said, and I think that's going to be our final comment. This is probably going to be a really long video, so who knows who will make it this far. But yeah, I'm kind of ready to see what they do with the Bad Batch, what the season is going to really be about. I'm ready. I've enjoyed several of the episodes. A few of them I've been like, yeah, okay, that wasn't great, but I couldn't get enjoyment out of it. But I'm ready to see what we'll do with this season. Let's move forward. Let's do something cool. That's what a lot of the early reviews have said, that it gets a lot better.
That's because they haven't expanded any of the ideas from the first season.
Yeah,
the first season left off this cliffhanger of, we took Lamasu because we needed to, but Lamasu we know was very intent on protecting Omega, hiding Omega, keeping Omega alive because she's important, but they haven't expanded that at all.
No.
Nor have they expanded the Crosshair with Bad Batch at all.
No, a lot of
the Crosshair episode's still my favorite one so far.
Oh, it's not even close. That Crosshair Cody episode was fantastic. But yeah, a lot of the story threads have just kind of been left dangling, and now I'm ready to, let's pull them and let's see where they go, right? Let's do it. Not that I haven't enjoyed the quote-unquote filler, but I'm ready for the
reunion. Bring Crosshair in there.
I'm sure we get that at some point. But anyway, yeah, I mean, let's start it. Let's hopefully next week we're talking about how great this 2-part episode was. But anyway, for now, it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell us what you thought of this episode and where you hope to see the Bad Batch go for the rest of the season. Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.